Welcome to Revenge with Lyra.
At dinner, Mom burst out. Starting next month, you'll pay rent if you want to stay here. Dad leaned back, smirking. Maybe it'll teach you some respect. I froze. My fork clattered against the plate. Weeks of their ridicule, whispers behind my back, and endless jabs at my job had led to this moment. Dead weight. That's what they called me. Lazy, ungrateful, hopeless. Every insult carved a deeper hole inside me, and now they dared to threaten my home. My hands shook as I placed the plate down. My parents chuckled, thinking this was funny. Teaching respect? Mocking me for surviving? I didn't say a word. I just stared. The clinking of silverware, the hum of the chandelier, the faint ticking of the clock, everything felt suffocating. I realized something in that instant. I wasn't their child anymore. Not in spirit, not in loyalty. I stood slowly, letting my chair scrape the floor just loud enough to echo. My name is Harper Collins. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. I turned toward them, a question forming in my mind that refused to leave. What happens when the people who raised you become the jailers of your soul? Their laughter continued, ignorant, blind. But I was done waiting for permission. I was done begging for acknowledgement. That night, I packed my bags. Not quietly, not subtly. Every item was a statement, a refusal to accept their narrative any longer. Clothes, books, my laptop, framed pictures, all carefully placed into my duffel, symbols of my independence and defiance. I paused at the door, feeling the weight of my decision. I wasn't running away. I was walking towards something they'd never understand. Freedom built on my terms. By morning, the house would be empty. They'd wake to silence where obedience once lived. And when they called a week later, panicked, voices cracking. "Why is your room empty?" I knew the story was only beginning. By the second day, my phone was silent. I wanted it that way. I didn't want to hear their panic, their fake concern, or the venom disguised as worry. Their calls and texts would come. They always did, but I had already moved beyond needing their approval. I found a small apartment downtown. Cozy, a little worn, but mine. No judgments, no whispers, no sneers. I unpacked slowly, savoring the freedom that had felt impossible under their roof. Every picture I hung on the wall was a declaration. I exist. On my terms. The first night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker, a soft hum of traffic beneath me. I thought of Mom's laugh, high-pitched and cruel, echoing dead weight, dead weight, dead weight. And Dad, with his lectures on respect, as if rent payments could buy humility. Respect, I mused, is earned, not extorted. I didn't cry. Not yet. I wasn't lonely. I was calculating. Because freedom isn't just leaving, it's reclaiming. Within the week, I'd secured a contract at a new firm, one that valued me. My emails poured in, contract signed, clients impressed by my sharp eye and unwavering attention. I smiled to myself, imagining Mom and Dad scoffing, thinking I was incapable of sustaining myself. By Friday, I had saved enough to make a move that would shock them completely. I drove past our old neighborhood in the late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows across streets I once walked timidly. My old room, the one they'd mocked me for, the one they demanded I pay for, was visible through the front windows. The blinds were drawn, but I knew the panic had begun. A week of silence, a week of independence, a week of them realizing I didn't need them. That was enough for a first taste of poetic justice. I texted Dad. "Hope you're comfortable in my old room. I made it easy for you to notice I'm gone." No reply. Then Mom. "Where are you?" "Answer us." "Nothing." And I smiled, thinking of the storm that would hit when they finally understood I hadn't just left. I had already begun to take the upper hand. I wasn't just gone. I was unstoppable. By the second week, the calls became frantic. Dad's voice cracked like a whip over the phone. "Harper, pick up. What's going on?" Mom's texts came in rapid fire, each one more desperate than the last. "You can't do this. This is your home." I ignored them all. Silence was my ally now. Every unanswered call was a stitch in the armor I was building around myself. Every unread message was proof that I was no longer their pawn. I walked through my new apartment, running my hands along the walls as if I could absorb the freedom. Each step echoed louder than their ridicule ever had. Their words, dead weight, useless, spoiled, were fading, losing power with every contract I signed, every project I completed, every client who thanked me personally. I smiled when I checked my bank account. All my money, my hard work, untouched by their judgment. I realized then what I had always known. The problem wasn't me. The problem was them, their need to control, to belittle, to force compliance through fear. That night, I stayed late at the office. The city lights reflected in the glass, and I imagined my parents sitting in their dining room, talking, panicking, realizing that the girl they mocked was thriving without them. It was delicious. But the best part hadn't come yet. I made a decision. I wasn't just going to disappear. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to send a message that they couldn't ignore. I purchased a small, inconspicuous security camera, nothing fancy, just enough to capture what would happen next. The following evening, I walked past our old house. Through the windows, I could see Mom pacing, wringing her hands, Dad muttering under his breath. Their fear was tangible, filling the room like smoke. I sent a single photo to their phones. My shadow in the hallway of their home. My old home. Mom's phone vibrated. She looked, gasped, and froze. Dad followed, pale and sweating. Their eyes locked onto the figure they couldn't reach. I was everywhere they weren't expecting. And in that moment, I realized the truth of my power. Leaving them behind physically wasn't enough. Showing them I had grown beyond their reach, emotionally, financially, mentally, was the real victory. They had created dead weight. I had created freedom. By the third week, my parents were unraveling. Their friends had noticed the tension, whispered questions about why I hadn't answered calls, why my room was empty, why the house felt smaller without me. The whispers reached them like frost creeping under doors, cold and relentless. I watched it all from my apartment window, sipping coffee, the city humming beneath me. I had a front row seat to their panic, and it was intoxicating. Every day, a new layer of their arrogance peeled away. Every desperate phone call or frantic text reminded me how powerless they were against my resolve. Then came the audacity of my next move. I contacted the landlord of our old house, discreetly. Explained the situation without revealing too much, only enough to ensure the old property was monitored for any unauthorized access. My parents had assumed I'd left everything behind. They hadn't counted on me knowing the house like the back of my hand, or being capable of turning the tables without stepping inside. I spent days preparing small, strategic reminders of my independence. Furniture I had sold, accounts I had closed, keys I no longer held. All visible, all undeniable. Every item missing from the house was a testament to their failure to control me. And then the evening came. A delivery arrived, a small package for Mom, addressed with my handwriting. She opened it, eyes widening, hands trembling. Inside, a note. This was never about money. It was about respect. I have it now. You lost it. Dad read it after she screamed. He looked around the empty room, the absence echoing like a drum. His jaw tightened. His voice faltered. She's gone. And she doesn't need us. I smiled. My heart pounded in rhythm with the truth I had built. Every insult, every mockery, every forced lesson they tried to teach me had only prepared me to strike back in the quietest, deadliest way, with success. By now, they were panicking openly. Friends whispered. Neighbors noticed. The aura of control they had wielded for decades had crumbled. And they couldn't reach me. I realized something vital that night. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent, subtle, devastatingly effective. It's the knowledge that you can thrive while those who mocked you collapse under their own hubris. And I was thriving. I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. By the fourth week, I had fully stepped into my new life. My apartment was more than a refuge. It was a statement. Minimalist, sharp, every object chosen not for comfort alone but to reflect control, independence, and power. My career was flourishing, clients praising my decisiveness and precision, and I began to see a life unchained from their constant judgment. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. Mom, her voice high and frantic. Harper, why aren't you answering? I didn't. I let it ring. And then Dad, trying to assert control. We need to talk about this. You can't just vanish. I smiled, thinking about every sneer, every lecture, every moment they treated me like I owed them something I had never borrowed. I realized the best revenge wasn't in confrontation. It was in their helplessness, the knowledge that I had outgrown them without lifting a finger in anger. I began sending small, calculated updates. Not calls, not texts, carefully curated glimpses of my life that they couldn't ignore. A photo of my new office with my name on the door. A picture of a client check deposited into my account. A short video of me laughing with friends at a downtown gallery opening. Each image, each update, was a quiet dagger. Every time they saw it, the panic intensified. Their control slipped further from their grasp. They had built walls around me, tried to define my worth, and now I was scaling those walls without effort, leaving them staring at emptiness where power once lived. Then came the boldest move. I sent a copy of my signed apartment lease to their email, addressed with a single line in the subject. Your warnings were irrelevant. Mom called immediately, screaming, pleading. Dad tried to intervene but failed to mask his panic. I didn't answer. I watched their faces over the video chat of their niece, my little cousin, reacting to my absence at a family gathering. Confusion, frustration,
shame.
I realized something powerful. Revenge wasn't about making them suffer physically or emotionally through confrontation. It was about removing myself from their reach and letting the consequences fall naturally. Every day they struggled without me. Every day they saw my independence. Every day their panic grew. That was the satisfaction I craved. And deep inside, I smiled because the storm wasn't even close to its peak. By the 5th week, the panic had become routine for them. Mom called at odd hours, voice trembling, begging for some form of control. Dad tried reasoning, but his words lacked the weight they once held. They had built a kingdom of authority around me, but I had quietly walked out the back door, leaving their walls to crumble. I spent mornings planning, afternoons working, evenings reflecting. Freedom tasted sharper than I imagined. Every contract signed, every meeting attended, every client impressed was a reminder of how far I'd come. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Then a thought struck me. Why stop here? I began meticulously documenting every detail of their past manipulations, their attempts to belittle me, their so-called lessons of respect, disguised as ultimatums. I had emails, notes, even photos of them laughing at my struggles. Not for revenge that would humiliate them publicly, but for clarity, for the undeniable truth I could hold up if anyone questioned my strength. The crescendo came one evening. I called the landlord again, not for permission, but to alert them of unauthorized access attempts. Mom's frantic whisper, Harper, stop. Just come back. I didn't. Instead, I let the law, my preparation, and their own recklessness take over. The next morning, I drove past the old house and noticed their panic in full display. Windows open, doors locked and unlocked, frantic shuffling. The neighbors' curious eyes met mine as I passed, a silent confirmation that my absence was more powerful than any words I could send. I texted Dad a single line. Your lesson in respect succeeded. I now live by my own rules. Mom's phone buzzed incessantly. Her trembling hands gripped the screen like it could deliver me back into her world. Dad's jaw tightened, a mixture of rage and fear painting his expression when he read it. I smiled and walked away. That night, I looked out over the city from my balcony, lights glimmering like scattered stars. I thought of all the times I had been underestimated, mocked, ignored. And I realized my real victory wasn't in their suffering. It was in my power, my independence, my control over my life. The storm was no longer outside. It had been internal all along, and I had won. By the 6th week, my parents' panic had reached its apex. Their friends whispered, neighbors noticed, and the tension in their home was palpable, a tangible fog of guilt, fear, and uncertainty. Every glance toward my empty room, every muttered conversation, every failed attempt to reach me was proof that their authority had disintegrated. I watched it unfold quietly, almost ceremoniously, from the sanctuary of my apartment. Freedom wasn't just a concept anymore. It was a living, breathing entity in my life. Every success I had, the signed contracts, the glowing client feedback, the newfound respect from colleagues, was a hammer against the walls they had built to contain me. Then came the turning point. I received a voicemail from Dad, uncharacteristically quiet, a tremor in his voice. "Harper, we made mistakes. Can we talk?" I paused. My finger hovered over the delete button. I didn't answer. Not yet. They had underestimated me for decades, mocked my dreams, called me dead weight, and tried to bend me into their expectations. Now, their realization of my independence was nothing short of intoxicating. Instead, I sent them a small package, a framed photo of myself, standing in front of my office with a quiet smile, confident, unbroken. No words, no explanations. Just the undeniable truth that I had grown, flourished, and succeeded without their input, their permission, or their approval. Mom's reaction was immediate. Tears, confusion, shame. Dad, too, stared at the photo, his pride shattered and replaced with awe and regret. They had always believed that controlling me meant knowing every step I took, every decision I made. But I had taught them the opposite. Control was an illusion, and independence was power. That night, I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. The storm of panic, anger, and regret I had orchestrated was not cruel. It was necessary. They had created the conditions, and I had responded with grace, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. The final piece of satisfaction came in the quiet, their acknowledgement. Not a single word could erase the years of belittlement, but every glance, every hesitant text, every whispered apology was a testament to my victory. I wasn't just free. I was untouchable. And the truth settled in my chest like a promise. I had risen above their expectations, above their control, and above their petty judgments. The only power they had left was the memory of what they had lost. The morning was quiet. The city below me glimmered like scattered diamonds, indifferent to the chaos I had left behind. I sipped my coffee, the warmth a small comfort against the storm I had endured and conquered. I had built a life from the rubble of mockery, insults, and dismissal. Each brick was a triumph, each window a perspective they had never granted me. My parents' voice, once a constant echo in my head, had faded into something distant, powerless. I called them, not to argue, not to plead, not to justify, just to close the circle. "Mom, Dad," I began, my voice calm, measured. "I'm living on my terms now. Every insult, every lecture, every attempt to belittle me, it only prepared me to thrive." There was silence on the line, a weight of realization. They heard it, the truth they had ignored, the power they had underestimated. I continued, "I'm not angry anymore. I'm just free. And that's all you need to know. Respect is earned, not demanded. And I have it, in every choice I make, in every success I achieve. You don't get to take that from me." Mom whispered something I couldn't fully catch, a mix of awe and regret. Dad remained quiet, his pride and fear colliding in the same pause. I hung up. Later that evening, I walked through my apartment, each corner familiar, each object a testament to independence. I realized the beauty of true revenge. It wasn't in their suffering. It wasn't in confrontation, in yelling, in public humiliation. It was in my liberation, my growth, my refusal to be small in a world that demanded I be lesser. I opened a drawer, pulled out the letters they had sent, the mockery they had crafted, the ultimatums they had believed would break me. I burned them, the flames dancing like a quiet symphony of justice. Each curl of smoke carried away the weight of years, the bitterness, the shame. I stepped onto the balcony, the city lights stretching infinitely before me. And for the first time in decades, I felt completely, utterly unshakable. I had turned their attempts to control me into fuel. Their doubts became my wings. Their mockery became my anthem. I wasn't just alive. I was victorious, serene, unstoppable. And in that quiet triumph, I finally whispered to myself, I am free. I am whole. I am enough.